On lap 11 of the Austrian Grand Prix, Max Verstappen tried to go around the outside of Lewis Hamilton, ran out of road, and ended up in the gravel. A clear penalty, Verstappen shouted over the radio. The stewards looked at it and did absolutely nothing. Hamilton, driving a Ferrari that had no business fighting for a podium, had just brutally squeezed a three-time world champion off the track and walked away completely clean. Mainstream media focused entirely on the rebirth of an iconic, bitter rivalry. But an hour later, that same Ferrari faded to a distant fifth place, utterly undone by a strategy gamble that collapsed in real time. The casual fan blamed bad luck and worst-case strategy. The data from Spielberg tells a much darker story, one that Ferrari did not want anyone to hear. Nobody walked into the Red Bull ring expecting Maranello to come apart. Ferrari arrived off the back of a strong showing in Barcelona, carrying the same trick rear rims that had cooled their tires to victory, alongside a brand-new internal combustion engine upgrade. When Hamilton put the car third on the grid on Saturday, it looked like the second fastest machine on the property. Everything pointed to a massive podium fight. But the timing screens hit a structural flaw that was already busy killing Ferrari's race before the lights even went out. To see the anatomy of this flaw, you have to look at who was actually setting the pace. George Russell controlled the Grand Prix from the front, while Verstappen traded blows with Andrea Kimi Antonelli in a relentless, wheel-to-wheel war for second. Ferrari wasn't even in the frame. While three cars fought for the podium, the red cars were quietly slipping into a different zip code. When the race began, Hamilton drove like a man who believed his qualifying time. He hunted down his teammate Charles Leclerc on the opening lap, took the position, and anchored himself to the gearbox of Russell's Mercedes. For the first stint, it looked brilliant. It was the sixth time in 8 races this season that Hamilton outperformed Leclerc, turning the inter-team battle into a personal habit. But that early pace was a complete mirage. To stay glued to the Mercedes ahead, Hamilton was asking more from his rear tires than the SF26 could physically afford. Maranello overpushed, pouring fatal amounts of heat into rubber that was already complaining. The bill for that early aggression arrived one stint later, and it was devastating. By lap 13, Ferrari blinked. They pulled Hamilton into the pit lane early for hard tires, attempting a classic undercut to gain clean air. Instead, the early stop triggered a catastrophic chain reaction. The tire degradation was already far worse than the engineers had braced for. Hamilton had explicitly warned his pit wall before the race that a two-stop strategy would not survive contact with reality, and the data proved him right within a dozen laps. The strategy forced a car that qualified third to do the brutal recovery work of a car that started 11th, burning up irreplaceable tire life, just to fight through midfield traffic. That structural vulnerability became completely exposed the second time Verstappen caught the Ferrari. The Red Bull didn't bother with the outside line this time. Verstappen dived down the inside of turn 6, took the apex cleanly, and checked out. Hamilton had zero response. The car was running completely out of electrical energy before the end of the long straights. This is the technical reality that poisoned Ferrari's entire afternoon. On raw top speed, the speed traps clocked the Ferrari at 323 kilometers an hour, right on par with Red Bull and McLaren. But the timing screen lied. Ferrari could hit the number. They just couldn't hold it. The electrical energy deployment was tapping out hundreds of meters before the braking zones. Hamilton was handing back a thin sliver of road on every single straight line. A car that runs out of hybrid punch at the top end cannot chase, cannot defend, and cannot exploit its aerodynamic grip. Midway through the race, the pit wall even instructed Hamilton to drop the power unit out of its highest deployment mode to manage soaring internal temperatures. It was a tactical dead end. Pushing the energy recovery system drove thermal limits into the red. Backing off to cool the car threw away the very lap time they were desperately chasing. With both cars suffering identical symptoms, Leclerc trailed home a miserable 8th, complaining of zero rear grip. The strategy department panicked. When a virtual safety car appeared, Ferrari threw a Hail Mary. They fitted soft tires to Hamilton's car and committed to an aggressive 3-stop race. It looked like a bold, attacking move. In reality, it was a team completely out of engineering ideas, throwing rubber at a structural deficit that tires could not solve. Hamilton emerged behind Oscar Piastri's McLaren, and despite having fresher tires and an extra pit stop in hand, he could not get close. The McLaren held him at arm's length to the flag. Hamilton crossed the line 26 seconds behind the winning Mercedes, the exact car he outqualified 24 hours earlier. Team principal Fred Vasseur refused to hide behind the pit wall, admitting the strategy wasn't the root cause, a lack of raw pace was. Hamilton named the monster explicitly before the cameras left the paddock. Deployment. This brings us to the ultimate crisis facing Maranello. Austria was the exact weekend Ferrari introduced their first major engine upgrade of the season. The governing body allowed the upgrade because Ferrari's power unit had been measured at more than 4% down against the benchmark Red Bull over the first 6 races. The upgrade they brought to Spielberg was merely a minor adjustment to the combustion side. The true silver bullet, a deeply reworked turbocharger designed to completely fix this exact deployment drop-off, is not scheduled to land until Zandvoort or Monza. The calendar will not wait. Mercedes has already leapfrogged Ferrari in the development race, and the points damage is turning a championship campaign into a pure salvage operation. Antonelli leads the drivers' table at 171 points, Russell has climbed to 131, and Hamilton has slid to third with 125, now a massive 46 points off the summit. In the Constructors' title, Mercedes is cleared out to a 98-point lead over the red cars. The ultimate test of Ferrari's season arrives right now. Formula One heads directly to the high-speed, high-energy layout of Silverstone for a ruthless sprint weekend. There is absolutely nowhere to hide a hybrid deployment deficit on the long straights of the British Grand Prix. Can Maranello find a short-term software fix to keep their electrical deployment alive through the final third of those straights, or will Hamilton's home crowd watch the Scuderia systematically fade backward into the midfield yet again? Drop your technical analysis in the comments below. Is Ferrari's hybrid system fundamentally broken for the summer, or can Vasseur minimize the damage until the Monza upgrade arrives? To see how this technical battle unfolds the exact second the checkered flag drops, make sure to hit subscribe and join the Overcut crew.